Welcome to Manufacturing Talk Radio, your everything manufacturing podcast, with host and veteran manufacturing industry expert Weiss and co-host Amy Nicklaus. Make sure to check out our catalog of 800 previous shows on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. Now, let's get into the episode.
Good day, everyone. This is Lou Weiss with Manufacturing Talk Radio. I'm here with Amy Nicklaus, my co-host, and we're here with also Harry, and everybody loves Harry, right, Harry? Harry Moser of Reshoring Initiative. Welcome aboard again.
As long as you continue to love him, I'm happy.
Well, we do love your T-shirt.
I love the T-shirt.
I mean, that's the best way to do this.
It's there's a job shop, a fellow I know, Mitch Free, who made them for me, and they're made in the U.S. out of U.S. cotton.
Oh, perfect.
It's funny that you mentioned Mitch Free, because I just reached out to him over the weekend. I'm looking to get him into a discussion about manufacturing.
He's done very well.
Have you ever met him?
Oh yeah. I knew him when he was something like Xometry, connecting companies and so on, and then he got out of that and he started his own job shop, and it's really big now and successful. He's done very well. I'm impressed.
I go back with him to the days of Thomas Register.
Yeah,
which is
that's right.
Decades ago. Anyhow, Harry, Reshoring Initiative. Let's refresh the memories of our audience and our new listeners as to what you're all about.
So our purpose is to bring manufacturing back to the U.S., more or less what President Trump talks about. He calls it reindustrialization. We call it reshoring. They're exactly the same thing. And because we've lost so much, there's a huge benefit for the country by regaining that work.
I think it's really important that you just said that, because I think that reshoring is such a very specific way of within the manufacturing industry, but to the layman and to the everyday consumer, really understanding that, that's really bringing industry back, and making that connection is really important. It really just simplifies exactly what reshoring is.
Well, to complicate it just a little bit, we differentiate between reshoring, which is done by U.S. headquartered companies, think General Motors or GE, and FDI, foreign direct investment, which is done by foreign headquartered companies, think Toyota or Siemens. But in both cases, they're deciding that it's in their interest to supply the U.S. market with more product made here rather than imported from there, wherever there happens to be.
Right.
So finally, the only way you can reindustrialize, the only way you can produce more is to reshore, is to produce here the stuff that we've been importing from somewhere else.
Harry, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the American public is beginning to really understand the reshoring aspect of our economy and how it directly impacts them. Because I think years ago, or not that many years ago, reshoring was just a buzzword, and now it's become critical to our economy.
I say yes, but on April 2nd, I read an article. I found an article in the New York Times by Jason Foreman, who used to be the head of the National Economic Council, I think under Obama. And the article says something like, "It's never coming back. Don't even bother. It's not worth it." So I'm planning to write a rebuttal, which I probably won't get in the New York Times, but it might be a very good episode to present. Here's what Jason says, and here's what Harry says in response, because it'll deal with, because there's all kinds of learned people out there, Paul Krugman, a lot of these top economists that say, forget it, it's history, don't even bother, let's just all do services. And that just rots my socks every time I hear it.
I think you're right. I think it would make a great conversation, and perhaps we can get Jason on here to talk about it with you.
That'd be wonderful if we could. Sure, we could help him.
Let's just go back. So, what is the actual mission of the Reshoring Initiative?
The mission is to balance the goods trade deficit.
Okay.
right now we have a trade deficit, which is the excess of our imports over our exports, and that amount last year was about 1.3 trillion with a T, $1.3 trillion. So that result of that is that we've got all these supply chain gaps, PPE, rare earth minerals, all kinds of stuff where pharmaceuticals, where we don't make them. And so we're dependent on other countries. And if you take the list of these categories, in 90, maybe 80% of the cases, China that we're dependent on. So our major adversary, if they cut us off on all that stuff, we'd like collapse overnight. And so our mission is to produce $1.3 trillion more, okay, and fill those supply chain gaps so we're not so dependent on other people, and provide about 4 or 5 million additional manufacturing jobs in the United States.
So how are we doing on that mission?
In terms of reshoring percent, so we track, I'll call it gross reshoring. So we track the jobs coming back, but at the same time, there's still some jobs moving offshore. There's still productivity improvements, still other things happening. But we track the announcements of jobs going back. And in 2010, when I founded the Reshoring Initiative, we identified 11,000 jobs announced between reshoring and FDI in that year. And then it's progressed. And in 2024, it was in the year 244,000 jobs. So it's going from 11,000 per year to 244,000, which is a compound annual growth rate of about 25%, which if we were a company, we'd be going public for $1 billion. And so it's done very well. Now, at the same time, and you'll read articles by this firm, and probably I haven't read it yet, but they'll say it's going nowhere. Manufacturing employment is flat for the last 14 or 15 years, which is it's up a little bit, 500,000, something like that. And that's true. But if you compare that to the past, we went through a period of decline like this. For 30, 40 years, manufacturing employment kept going down. And now we've had 15 years of flat. And 15 years of flat is better than continuing on down like this. So when I did a regression analysis on it, I concluded that we have 5 or 6 million more jobs than one would have predicted back in 2010. And the reason is because we've had so much reshoring and so much less offshoring than was happening in the past. So are we out of the hole? No, but we've stopped digging the hole deeper and we're starting to clamber our way up.
It's funny, this morning I ran across a news bite. It's a little off track, but I think it's worthy commenting because I found it absolutely shocking. And that is, there's one product in this country that we actually are looking to offshore it as opposed to onshore, reshore, and that is helium-3. Helium-3 produced in this country for the rocket ships going to the moon costs, here it comes, folks, $20 million a kilo. They determined that it'll be cheaper to manufacture it on the moon. So that's what one of the missions about the moon trip now and the landing in 2028 to see where they can get the most benefit of helium-3, which is a extremely, extremely rare commodity. But they say the moon is full of it. So if you're full of it, you're full of it.
The mission is also going to be looking for water, because the part of the mission plan is to get ready to eventually go on to Mars. And if you're going to go on to Mars, you need reaction mass, for the rockets. So you need water, and there's places under one of the poles where they think there's a lot of water, and they're going to be able to mine that and use it for the future flights further into space.
I think they're calling it harvesting.
Yes. Well, speaking of harvesting, one of the things that you mentioned that I think is relevant is kind of bringing back, obviously, with this leveling off of the jobs, hopefully an increase there. What does that mean for the jobs that are being offered as far as skills growth?
We did a survey last year, of a reshoring survey. Got 500 good responses. We were very pleased. And we asked companies, what would motivate you most to bring the manufacturing work back? And
Right.
they wanted lower taxes, they wanted deregulation, they wanted tariffs, they wanted all these kinds of things, but lower currency. But most highest priority was a better quality and quantity of skilled workforce. That got they said under that condition they'd bring back 30% of the work, whereas the other ones were more like 20 or 15%. So they put their highest priority on having the workforce, and their insight is correct, because if even though our president and every president has said we can out manufacture anybody, we've got the best workforce in the world, they have to say that to get reelected, but in reality we do a horrible job of basic education for our kids. So many of them are not numeric or literate. And then we don't get the best kids to become the tool makers and the welders and the forgers. Instead, we get those that somehow or other can't go on to college. And then you try get the best of these. Whereas in other countries like Germany and Switzerland, they take really top kids at the age of 16, they do internships and apprenticeships, and they train them so well. So they get really smart kids, train them much better than we do, and therefore they're more productive, higher quality, better delivery, all kinds of things. And so we need that. We need to, if we're going to be competitive in the world, especially if we want to continue to pay 3 times as much as China and five times as much as Mexico, we've got to have a team that's at least as good or better than theirs.
Have you seen any growth with that?
President Trump came out about 6 months ago with an executive order for skilled workforce, and he called for 1 million more apprenticeships. And there's various things going on that, and I've been talking to the Department of Labor and giving them my suggestions on what they have to do to make that happen. And at the same time, I get all the newsletters, Industry Week and SME and so on, and almost every day I see an announcement of another community college that has an advanced manufacturing program. And so yes, I'm convinced that it's happening. The number of manufacturing apprentices in the last, I think, either 5 or 10 years has increased by 83%. I'm starting to see surveys 5-10 years ago said, should we have? They asked people, should we have more manufacturing here? Everybody says yes. Are your kids going to go into manufacturing? Everybody said no. And but now I've seen surveys that say, we think that going into manufacturing, we think going into the skilled trades is an excellent choice for our kid. And part of that is sort of a self-inflicted wound by the universities, because they've gotten the tuition so high.
Yeah.
And they've sort of softened down the training so much that you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and you come out. I read one study that said 60% of the college graduates were cognitively indistinguishable from the condition when they went in as freshmen. So they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, 4 years of their life, and were not a better prospective worker than they were when they started. Now that's sad for a country.
It really is. I mean, I can't tell you how many people that I know that I feel like had degrees in like underwater basket weaving. And it's like, okay, well, what are you going to do with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you just have to start figuring it out. So I think that makes a lot of
And
sense.
it's the country's own fault, because we have this wonderful college loan system, and almost anybody can apply for it and get the money. And I mean, later on in life, when they want a car loan or a house loan, the bank says, show me how you're going to be able to pay it off. Okay, but with a college loan, they don't do that. And so what I think they should be saying is, where do you want to go? What are you going to study?
Yeah.
Are you qualified for that, such that I believe you'll graduate? Because a lot of them don't graduate. So will the lender believe you're going to graduate? And if you do, will you make enough money to be able to pay off the loan? And if you're not going to graduate and make enough money to pay off the loan, you don't get the loan. You go study something else where you can get a good return on your investment. But
Right.
our system, and so as a result, we've had something $500 billion of write-offs of the college loans because the people don't pay them off.
Yeah.
And you and I are paying for it as taxpayers.
Yeah, and whereas if you go into an internship for a skill, you're getting paid for your internship, and then you're walking out in a much less amount of time, making, 140, $150,000 year one in a lot of these.
Certainly not all making that.
Not all, but I'm saying there is a lot of growth opportunity, and it's much faster, and there's a need for it.
No question. The best statistics I've seen are for FAME, all caps FAME, which is an apprenticeship system that came out of Toyota in Kentucky that NAM is now working with. And their average apprentice graduate, 5 years after graduation, is making about $98,000 a year, which is approximately the same as the average of PhDs, which is
Wow.
pretty darn good.
Absolutely. All right, so that's
All right.
definitely a direction we need to start heading in.
To digress for a moment, Harry, I know you won an award from the Association of Manufacturing Technology. Tell us a little bit about that.
No. It was a great honor. It was back March 12th in Fort Lauderdale, and they do this like every other year or something like that, and they find somebody that they believe deserves it. And this, they flipped the coin and came up with Harry this time, but it was just and for background, AMT used to be the National Machine Tool Builders Association, so it's machine tools plus robots and tooling, cutting fluids, all this kind of thing. And they put on IMTS, which is in a really good year is 100,000 attendee trade show in McCormick Place, the biggest manufacturing trade show in the Americas, and the second or third biggest of any kind of trade show in the Americas. And so they put that on, and I was introduced by Doug Woods, who runs the association, good friend, and by Lee Morris, who runs Morris Group, which is about the largest machine tool distributorship in the country, and believes is a supporter of ours, which we appreciate, and has done a great job supporting U.S. manufacturing as a whole. And I introduced a couple of concepts. One, takeaways. I like people to go away with something they can do as a result of having heard the talk. And one is take care of customers. When I was the president of Charmy, that was our mantra. We just focused on still and delighting the customers. And as a result of that, we went in 7 years, we went from being number 7 in the industry to number 1 in EDM in North America, and focused mainly on just ruthlessly, taking care of the customer, delighting the customer. And the other thing was the importance of always selling, And so I told the story about going to a wedding of my niece in a country club outside Cleveland, and I'm talking to doctors and lawyers and Indian chiefs, and I went to the bride's mother and said, "Aren't there any manufacturers here I can talk to?" She said, "Yeah, Bill over there." So I went over to Bill, and it turned out that Bill's company was in the market for an EDM machine, which is what my company, produced and sold, and he had not been talking to us; he'd been talking to the competition. So that the next month in our international newsletter, it talked about the wedding lead, and 2 months later, the newsletter talked about the wedding order. And so then I could go back to the salesman and distributor and say, "I'm selling the damn machines on Saturday at the wedding. You can at least get up and sell really hard all week long."
So, one of the questions that I had, which will bring this all full circle, I think, to some degree, is that why do we have such a large trade deficit? And I think, being competitive, to your point, has been part of that problem in other ways. But, what you're talking about is really kind of how you construct and do business. But obviously we struggle with some of the other things as far as competitiveness that I think have probably lent to such a large trade deficit. But can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, well, the underlying problem has been cost, that the cost of making things in the U.S. is 15 to 20% higher than in the other developed countries like Germany, Switzerland, France, et cetera. France, and we're 50 to 60% higher than China, maybe Indonesia, India, places like that, where the wages are substantially lower. So, and that difference is enough to attract companies to they know their competitor is going to get product there and sell it at this price. And then therefore, if they try and make it here in the U.S. sell at this price, they're going out of business. So they follow the other guy to those low cost countries. And so then you say, well, why is our cost so high? Significantly, it's because the dollar's too high. So we have the reserve currency, which is described as a privilege, and it is for a bank because it attracts money to the United States. But for a manufacturer, it means our wages are this high relative to theirs instead of that high relative to theirs. And so I've done a lot of studies on it, and the U.S. dollar is overvalued by about 15 to 20% versus the developed countries, and about 50% versus China and so on. So just by taking that excess out of the dollar, and that the question is, do you do it like this or do you do it gradually like this? Because it has impacts. But if you do that, all of a sudden the companies would say, there's not so much difference anymore. Yeah, when you add in the duty and the freight and the carrying cost of inventory and the geopolitical risk, it's not worth it anymore. And so I wouldn't have to work so hard to get people to do it because companies would see it more clearly on their own that it's in their interest to bring the work back. So to me, the dollar is the number one thing. But because of the dollar having been so high and it being so attractive to get things offshore, now we got these supply chain gaps that I talked about. So now there's things you can't get here. So now it's going to take years for companies to say, now it makes sense to make it here, build a factory, $1 billion, 2 years, hire 1,000 people. So it takes time and money to repair all those wounds that we've had from the past.
Isn't it also true that, I think anyway, a significant portion of the trade deficit is that there's really no policy concern over the debt?
Generally speaking, most economists, most politicians are trained in Ricardian economics, which is get it where you can get it cheapest. and there's a logic to that, but it assumes it doesn't assume that the dollar is overvalued by 20 to 50%, because that didn't used to happen back in the old. It used to be if a country had a big trade deficit like it does now, their currency would come down until things got into balance. It doesn't happen anymore because we're the reserve currency. And so what we say is get that excess out of the dollar and then let the market behave, because the market, it's better that the market decides what companies, what products are the winners and losers, rather than having Harry decide. But you have to level the playing field enough so that the market can operate properly. So that's what we push very hard for, is getting the dollar down. And there's mechanisms for that. There's something called the market access charge by Dr. John Hanson that would apply a little fee to money that's coming in here just to be stored, not to buy factories, but just to be stored. And by reducing the demand for dollars, the dollar would come down, the other currencies would come up, and we'd get things back into better balance. That's my first choice. Second choice would be a value-added tax. And third choice would be the tariffs, but not the chaotic, changing every week, hard to understand tariffs, but something
There's
simple.
A problem with that? Harry, what does Reshoring Initiative do for manufacturing companies?
Yeah, so I think whatever's needed. I think most important, we make the trend credible. So when I started this 16 years ago, it was not credible. Nobody believed it. Everybody said, Harry, don't bother. It's not going to happen. We're too far gone, blah, blah, blah. And so by documenting the trend, by being on how many, 20 of your shows, we've written hundreds and hundreds of articles, been interviewed 1,000 times, what have you, made presentations. And by getting the word out, reshoring became credible, became believable. And it wasn't inevitable. For companies, it wasn't simple, but at least it was worth thinking about. It was credible enough for them to try. So credibility for the trend, and then specifically documenting the trend from 11,000 jobs per year up to 244,000, promoting it with all the talk and articles and so on. We provide the the TCO estimator, total cost of ownership estimator, which starts with that factory price and adds in the duty and the freight and the carrying cost of inventory, the intellectual property risk, the geopolitical risk like China and Taiwan and so on. And when you do that, it's free to use online on our website. I know 1,000 people have used it. If the company comparing US to China based on price, the US wins 8% of the time, based on total cost 32% of the time. And if there's a 15% tariff, then 46% of the time. So just by getting companies to do the math correctly, the US win rate goes up enough. Like I've talked to the White House. They said, what do you want us to do? Get President Trump to ask every company to use total cost of ownership to make when they make their sourcing decisions for free online on our websites. We're not making money on it.
Why don't you give us that URL so our audience could see what you're talking
Yeah.
about?
If they just go to the website, which is reshorenow.org, and in the bar at the top it says total cost of ownership estimator. Just click on it. But if companies would do that, millions of jobs just by getting companies to do the math correctly, millions of jobs would come back with no grants, no tax reductions, no changing currency, no anything. But then you'd still need the workforce. You'd still need companies to do the investment. You'd still need companies to take the long-term perspective of growth and success instead of the short-term profit maximizing for the quarter in Wall Street. So there's still this things that that's necessary, but all these other things have to fall into place. We have a geopolitical risk. Obviously we're surrounded by it for the last month, I guess, and so we came out about a year or two ago with a geopolitical risk map that estimates the probability of a U.S. company being decoupled, meaning cut off from its supplier in each of the other countries. And the idea is for the company to say, well, what am I getting specifically from China? And if it got cut off because of Taiwan, how long is that going to last? 6 months or a year? How long is it going to take me to find a replacement source? Well, they could say, well, there's a lot of guys have been trying to get me to bring the work back. And I tell them that imagine the war starts yesterday and you call those suppliers today and you say, can you make those things for me in a couple of weeks? And the supplier's going to say, well, Bill, I could have a month ago, but you're the thousandth call I've had today after the war started. I think it's going to be 2 or 3 years until I can build a couple of factories and buy the equipment, hire the people. I'm going to take care of the people that gave me the work before the war started. I'm going to take care of their needs first. See? So geopolitical risk is a significant consideration. We have a national metalworking reshoring award. So companies that have brought work back, metallic work, machined, forged, cast, what have you, they can apply for that, and it's being given this year at IMTS, the big machine tool show, and it will be done the odd years at FabTech, the metal fabrication show, and so it gets lots of publicity. Last year was won by Marlin Wire Products, Drew Greenblatt, real great guy, and by GE Appliances, which has invested $6.5 billion to reshore manufacturing from Mexico and China, and now has, I think, 6,500 U.S. suppliers producing all the components to go into the appliances. So the big company makes a decision, and then all these smaller companies benefit from that because that's where most of the work actually gets done. If anybody out there that has reshored, I'd love to hear about it. Again, info at reshorenow.org will be good. And if you have the opportunity to reshore in your own company, your own big company, or helping your customer decide to reshore and give you the business, contact me and I'll help you. I need more. I want to get to 244,000 up to 300,000 a year.
Matter of fact, on your website, you have the 2026 Reshoring Survey, which I think is important information for manufacturers to give to you so you can come up with the new 2026-27 progress that's being made within your sphere of influence. So I recommend that you go to Harry's website, which is, Harry, I want to get it right.
Reshorenow.org. I could send you the URL for the survey, and maybe you could post it somewhere on this.
We will.
Sure.
Yeah, and
Do it.
then that'll be easier for people to get it directly.
Do it.
But we need hundreds of responses to make you credible, and the idea is to have enough credible data on what it will take to get people to reshore, why they've reshored so far, why they haven't, and so on, and then feed that to the White House so the White House can make better decisions to do the things that we all need, that the country needs.
Well, it sounds like the service that you offer is incredibly valuable in a time when there's so much uncertainty to help, these companies really project and plan. So there seems to be a tremendous amount of value. So participating in a survey like that to give even more information would be very beneficial, not just for the companies themselves, but, for us as a whole.
Yeah, and when the survey's done and we've got the results, you get me back and we'll review the results of the survey.
Perfect.
Thanks, Harry, for being here as usual. We'll gear up for your next appearance in the future sometime. I just want to remind everyone that Manufacturing Talk Radio is a weekly podcast. Come to our website, which is manufacturingtalkradio.com, and manufacturing is spelled out. Sign up, subscribe, and you'll get notifications every time we do a show. Amy, any parting words?
Yep. For more information on everything that Harry's talked about today, you can also go to our website and as well as get links within our bio for this. So thanks so much, and join us again next time.
Harry, thank you.
You both look great in your yellow jackets.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us on another episode of Manufacturing Talk Radio with hosts Louis Weiss and Amy Nicklaus. Before you head out, make sure to subscribe and leave us a review. For more information about the show and the manufacturing industry, head over to mfgtalkradio.com. That's mfgtalkradio.com.
Resonate.